Paul talking about, it doesn't really matter what you eat. You can eat whatever you want. For one man believes that he might eat all things, but he who is weak eats only vegetables. Let not him who eats despise him who does not eat. And let not him who does not eat judge him who eats, for God has received him.
First of all, the word pork or unclean food doesn't come anywhere in this passage. This passage has nothing to do with whether or not it's good to be a vegetarian or be a carnivore or eat pork or just eat only clean food. This verse has to do with a big issue that faced the New Testament Christians about whether or not they could eat things that had been sacrificed to idols. Now, today when you go buy meat in the meat section, you're not worried that there's a butcher back at the slaughterhouse that has prayed and offered this to the devil before you bought it. In Bible times, all of the slaughterhouses had deities. Whenever they killed an animal, even for food, they were offered to their local gods, and the Romans had lots of different gods. There were Greco-Roman gods everywhere. Many of the sensitive Jews said, how can we buy that food that has been offered to Roman gods? Aren't we participating in their idolatry? Paul said, look, if your faith is weak and you're worried about that, then don't eat. Don't judge those who do eat it. Well, first, let me give you a verse here. If you look in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, and let's look in verse 25. Paul is saying to the Corinthians, now these are not Jews, they're in Corinth. He says, eat whatever is sold in the meat market, asking no questions for conscience sake. For the earth is the Lord and its fullness thereof. Another place he says, it's sanctified by the word of God and prayer. Meaning, if the word of God says it's clean and you've prayed and thanked God for it, then don't say, was it offered to an idol? Read down a little further. Go to verse 28. If you're invited to eat with somebody, he says, if anyone says to you, this was offered to idols, do not eat it for the sake of the one who told you and for conscience sake. He said, but the idol is nothing. They're just statues. But if it's hurting their conscience, Paul says, don't do anything that's going to injure your brother's conscience. Is it pretty clear from what I'm reading here? The issue was eating things offered to idols had nothing to do with clean or unclean meat. The Jews and the Christians would only eat clean meat. So that was not the issue. But was the goat or the sheep or the chicken offered to Jupiter or Mercury? And they were afraid, am I participating in idolatry by doing this? How many of you like Thai food? You eat at a Chinese restaurant? Any of you ever gone in and seen a Buddha? Did that keep you from eating? Some people I know, they're really sensitive and they say, they got a pagan idol here, I can't eat here. Say, all right, we'll go somewhere else. So that's kind of what they were dealing with back then, but the Jews were much more sensitive to the Roman sacrifice. Is that clear? That's what Paul's talking about in Romans 14.